Uh, Hang on there, folks. We're starting a little bit early. Get things all situated. So come on in. Take a load off. Make sure things work. There we go. Update. Okay. Done that. Okay. Good morning, Jordan. Very early.
Hello, Jordan. Thanks for stopping by. Okay, we're still in the preparation phase, everyone. Be patient if you're watching us.
Yeah.
We're just getting the studio ready and all our interfaces. My name is Brother Alexis Spagnolo. I'm president of Orla Militaris Inc., a Montana security company dedicated to the defense of Christians persecuted for their faith. And our secondary mission is humanitarian aid to Christians who are persecuted. And we have begun this Beirut Humanitarian Fund because of our great desire to help the Catholics, the Christians of Lebanon. This has been a long-term goal of our order. This tragedy is something that exceeds all bounds of normality. And so we have recognized in common sense Catholic way of viewing reality that it is also part of our mission to come to the help of the Christians of Beirut, even though this is not a terrorist attack as much as we understand it so far as the cause. But it is a tragedy for which we need to open our hearts. And Order Militaris Catholicus, an international association of Catholics who've joined together since 2016 to defend Christians persecuted for their faith, is an organization based on the Catholic faith and Christian belief that we need to help our brothers in times of need. And we are a humanitarian organization, although our first goal is security and defense. So this is our second live fundraiser. We're not going to call it a telethon because in some countries that word means something entirely different than it means in the English language. So we'll call it a fundraiser. And we're going to talk about the situation in Beirut, Lebanon, and how we can all help. And I would encourage everyone watching this program, go to the links under the YouTube video where you can make a donation directly to the Beirut Humanitarian Fund. And you can use credit card, debit card, Alipay, Google Pay, Microsoft Pay, SoFort Pay, Ideal Pay. And via Google Pay, you could use Bitcoins or cash to make a donation to this fund. And the link will take you to the humanitarian page's official site and explain all the reasons and motives and purposes of the fund.
I'll be right back, and we're gonna get the mouse for the Chromebook so I can.
Okay. So we're going to go live in 8 minutes. We're still getting ready here and giving time for everyone to log on. I want to share this link.
One thing about a Chromebook, folks, there's no actual mouse on it. Can't right click to copy and paste. Okay. So when we hit about 10:45, folks, we'll be hitting the record button here so we can record this so we can get it on our BitChute channel and the audio for Mixcloud. So yeah, just be patient, hang around, come back in a little bit. Just get things all shared.
So if you want to share this program, you can find tweets about it at on Twitter at MILITARISCATH, Militaris Cath, and that's going to be pinned to the profile. And we're going to retweet it on our corporate account at Ordo Militaris Inc.
Okay.
And if you are on social media right now, ask you please to share the link to this live show on all your social media accounts, because there are many people out there who want to help, don't know how to help, would like to learn more, and this program will benefit them in making a decision.
So, Jordan, if you can sneak it in, if your boss ain't looking, share this thing on your Facebook page. And it really helped. I want to thank those 4 people who stopped by already to leave the 4 upvotes. So thank you. And to the listeners and watchers who watch later, thank you for all your help on tracking down information on the miracle of the Vistula in Poland, and on the other information about Admiral Kolchak. We're getting there with learning more about him. and his son. Now, if we can figure out where to find his books, because it does say he wrote his memoirs, and his son also wrote a family essay on the family. So to our Russian viewer who helped with the Kolchak thing, thank you. Please keep digging. Um, yeah. And the link to donate is in the chat already. It's right under my good morning and just setting up message. So please click that. It'll take you to the donate page. Um, let's see. 45 minutes to go. I'll be officially begin. Okay.
Okay, Jay sent a message to all 2,100 subscribers of From Rome Info Video and all 1,700 subscribers of FromRome.info. So
Okay. Good.
everyone in Military Cast knows about it now. So
Hmm.
okay, so I want to welcome everyone to the live appeal for the Beirut Humanitarian Relief Fund, which is a mission of Ordo Militaris Catholicus to help the Christian victims of the Beirut explosion, which has destroyed practically the entire city of Beirut. I'm talking about the actual municipal legal area, and damaged many other communities adjacent. And we are a Catholic organization, not political. We're international. We also admit to our membership anyone who wants to share in our mission of defending Christians against persecution. But due to the extraordinary circumstance of the Beirut explosion, we've begun a humanitarian mission that will aim to bring help and humanitarian assistance to the victims of the Christian victims of the explosion. Which, because it's so extraordinary, it requires that we also act extraordinarily and open our hearts to Lebanon, and that is our theme for today's program. Open your hearts to Lebanon. A lot of Christians around the world, a lot of Catholics around the world don't realize that Lebanon is a Christian country. it's that part of the Mideast that has kept the Christian faith for 2,000 years under the most horrendous ages of persecution and without any help from anyone. And in modern times, they've had, from the times of the Crusaders, they were strong allies of the Roman Catholic Crusaders who liberated the Holy Land and won the right of Christians everywhere to worship at Jerusalem and the places sanctified by our Lord's life. And in modern times, they've been strong allies of the French and of Christians everywhere in the Mideast, and share a country called Lebanon, which is about 50% Christian. Okay, and we're talking about maybe about 45% Catholic. Okay, and maybe about 45, maybe 40% Catholic and 10% Orthodox or Armenian, and then the rest 50% is half Shia, half Sunni. So the people are, half the country is Arab, half the country is Maronite, or you would say Phoenician. Contrary to what some people want to consider, racial categories don't exist objectively, but if you had to categorize a race, the Lebanese are white people, okay? We're not talking about Africa. Lebanon is in the easternmost edge of the Mediterranean. If you look at the Mediterranean Ocean, it's way over to the eastern side. And it's about at the latitude of North Carolina, I think. It's Virginia, around that latitude. And but it's much hotter because it's surrounded by regions of the desert. So this is what Beirut is, its capital. It's also the major port for the whole region. And this is what we're going to talk about today, the Beirut Humanitarian Fund. So I'll hand it over to you, AJ, the manager at Ordo Militaris Radio TV.
So you found out more about the effects of the explosion on the buildings. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so if you go to the humanitarian page at ordo-militaris.us and click the link for the Beirut Humanitarian Fund, I've added 2 videos there to illustrate the absolute total devastation. Even the American envoy who was sent there just some days ago said he has never seen such levels of complete devastation, even in a city during wartime, okay? So the amount of destruction that would take place during a civil war fighting, urban fighting in modern war, which would take years, was accomplished in seconds, okay? The buildings are completely destroyed. Every single window and door is ripped off. Roofing is ripped off. Buildings, some buildings have collapsed, others are completely unstable. Even the furniture in the room was by the blast ripped to shreds. Stained glass windows were ripped out of churches. Bell towers had their roofs just ripped right off. Cars were hurled in the air and spun over as in an atomic blast. And since there was a fire in a munitions storage facility that was producing smoke and a lot of noise prior to this, a good portion of the population of the city, which faces the sea and faces the harbor, were looking at the fire from their dwellings, either on their balconies or at their windows, not suspecting at all that there was this huge storage of that might blow up. And so when the explosion did take place, they bore the brunt of it. And there's last count I saw, there were 220 people killed, more than 6,000 injured, more than 300,000 have lost housing. And that includes 80,000 children. And it's complete devastation. If it had been a nuclear weapon, the death toll would be in the hundreds of thousands. It was not. It was just a conventional explosion. And so the death toll, thankfully, is much lower. But since more people survived, the actual suffering is greater because they survive now with all their suffering. So,
Yeah. And it's just people rushing to say it was a bomb and stuff, and only thing they saw to make it think it was a A bomb was the mushroom cloud, and but there was no bright light. There was no fire from it. It scorched the entire area. So,
Yeah, people have to, we have to understand that whenever there's any large explosion, you're going to get a mushroom cloud and what's kind of called an event horizon cloud, where the atmosphere is compressed and forms like a outward growing eggshell. But that doesn't mean it's nuclear, okay? A nuclear reaction is when the atoms at their most fundamental levels start splitting in half because of the radiation given out by the concentrated radioactive material. And you have the fission of nuclei. And that causes tremendous heats, the heat of the level of the sun, and even hotter, perhaps. And that actually burns the atmosphere and burns everything, creates a tremendous heat. Whereas in a standard explosion, the fissile material explodes. And once it explodes, there's no more heat generated because it's not sufficient to ignite the atmosphere or burn anything outside of the central core. And so you could call this a cold explosion. The only thing people saw seconds beforehand, within fraction of a second beforehand, was the expanding eggshell compression cloud. And the explosion hit them soon afterwards, because the explosion traveled at the speed of sound, I think. And so they didn't have much to do. And the poor people who were standing next to a glass window had that window shatter into 10,000 fragments and go right in their faces.
yeah. And now the photos are coming out, but you can clearly see how shoddy the medical care is for the wounded. The horrible stitching, horrible, probably medical staples have to be used to hold someone together until a more permanent care can help a person. Just sheets of glass, and I don't know how many sheets of glass, but almost every window.
Every window in the city. You must have more than 1 million windows that were shattered. The stitching is absolutely horrible. It looks barbaric. But we have to understand at the same time, the hospitals of the city were not designed to take 6,000 stitching surgeries at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
They had to stitch the people up as fast as possible. They would have bled to death. So it was a question of saving their lives or saving their faces. So they had to choose the life first. That's the rule of medicine. But that means that these people will never be able to forget this tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
Every time they look in the mirror, they will be reminded of this explosion and how it took them unawares. And perhaps the most frustrating thing of it all is it didn't have to happen. There were so many occasions in the last 6 years to have prevented it from happening. And little girls completely scarred. And in the culture of the Mideast, if you have a scarred face, you probably will never be able to marry. And elderly people. And we won't even talk about the dead who were, the firefighters who were on the scene, their bodies were blown in the air. There are many videos of people seeing objects flying through the air, and they say, is that an airplane or is that a missile? No, it's a human body.
We have a comment from someone who lived in Lebanon. Veronica Rose. I lived in Lebanon before and during the Civil War and worked at the Beirut University College as an assistant professor. Some of my relatives still live in Beirut but believe the country is dying.
Yeah, that seems to be the general impression. I've talked to a person who lives in Lebanon, and you sense it's just gushing from the Lebanese despair. It's just gushing from them. Complete despair in their nation, and despair in the English sense of the word of loss of hope. Um, Lebanon in the 60s was considered the Riviera of the Mideast. It was considered the most vibrant economy. It had a beautiful, flourishing society that was very much like the southern coast of France. Open, Western. At that time, the Christians were about 60% of the population. And since then, it's been attacked by Syria. It's been attacked by Israel. It's been overrun by Palestinians who started wars with Israel, Hezbollah, who started wars with Israel. Um, it's had its civil wars, and it's had lots of political corruptions, assassinations. It's become a victim of almost every tragedy, and the explosion of Beirut's harbor, this thing, is like the tragedy upon all the other tragedies. We have a phrase in the English language, the straw that broke the camel's back. This is the bomb that broke the camel's back. And so as a Christian, as a Catholic, we have to open our hearts and compassion to the Lebanese people. They've been crushed. Okay. It's like it's like the parable of the Good Samaritan going down the road to Jericho and finding a person beaten up on the side of the road. We cannot move to the other side of the road and ignore what we see. And alas, too many Christians in the West are doing that. Okay. No, we have to pick up Lebanon, Beirut, and we have to, as our Lord said, pour oil and wine into the wounds, and that's the works of charity. So, I mean, it's pretty obvious these people need help, but the more you get to see who was injured, how they were injured, why they were injured, and when, and the whole historical context of it, the more it becomes all the more pitiful and heart-wrenching.
Yeah. The Christian party, the Catholic Party, began a movement for all Christians and people of goodwill who are in Parliament to resign because of this. And now the entire government has resigned. Um, uh, have they decided what's going to happen?
Well, there's going to be new elections, I understand. There's a caretaker government. Before resigning, the parliament gave the military basically complete power. They're running, the country's basically under military law now, which has not pleased many human rights advocates. But there is intense political strife in the city, in the country now, because we have to understand how this happened. How did it happen that this huge mass of explosive material was kept right at the center of the harbor for 60 years? Okay, it doesn't come from Lebanon. It was involved in, it was a ship that was just passing through and needed repairs, and it dropped it there. It was coming from Ukraine or Russia, I think, and there was a legal battle over it. And then when Hezbollah formed a political alliance, because they had a political alliance with the main Maronite party, because the politics in Lebanon is between basically three groups: the Maronites, the Sunni, and the Shia. And neither of the three have power to rule. Two of them have to make an alliance with the other two, with the other one, okay? But the Maronites are the strongest of all, so they can easily make alliance. But the Maronites have been historic opponents of the Sunni, okay, who are the natives of Lebanon. So the Maronites made an alliance with the Shia, who have, or Hezbollah, those who have connections with Iran, and in recent years, and that means Hezbollah got control of the ports, and they just love this supply of explosive material because they used it for their military and terrorist operations. And it's the realization of that kind of dirty political alliance that led to the non-action about the removal of this explosive material that's made people so enraged. And as one writer I saw this morning is, the Lebanese by nature are merchants. They're willing to sell anything that, make an agreement to sell anything. And it's even in politics, it's very unlike Western politics. In Western politics, if party A allies with party B, then all throughout the nation, A and B are allied, but not in Lebanon. In Lebanon, party A will ally with party B in the north, and then they'll ally with party C in the south, and in the center, they'll ally with party D, because their objective is to win in every locale. Their alliances don't matter really ideologically. They're not really ideological, but that leads to a lot of politicking and not the kind of principled politics that we might be expecting in the West. And that's what so frustrated the people. I would imagine it's the Sunnis especially, and a good portion of the Christians, and the non-Hezbollah allied Shia who are most upset about this, and the people who want a prosperous, modern, democratic, open, free society in the Christian sense of those words, not the Masonic sense of those words, who are most desperate. And I read that there are actually more Lebanese living outside of Lebanon than live in Lebanon, because so many of them have despaired of having any hope in their own country, they've gone elsewhere. And that also harms a country, because when those who could do something about the problems leave, what is left are those people who don't want to do anything about the problem, and the problems get worse. And you have a spiral downward. It's a demographic, political, cultural downward spiral. If there is going to be hope for Lebanon, it's not just going to come from international humanitarian aid. The diaspora of Lebanese who live in countries with law and order and higher ethical standards need to come together and return to Lebanon and intervene and make Lebanon a modern nation without all this corruption. They can't just let it go. If you ignore a problem, it only gets worse. The honest have to step forward and do something about it. And AJ and I are not Lebanese. We're just devout Catholics, and we want to help as much as we can, and that's the purpose of our effort. And so we're not political. We're not going to take any sides with one party or the other. We're not going to. Our purpose of our relief fund is not to put money in the hands of the government, and even with other relief organizations, we're going to be highly suspect, because we're not in favor of promoting abortion. We're not in favor of promoting gay rights. We're not in favor of promoting socialism, Marxism, exploitation of children. We're not out to change Lebanon. We're out to help victims. And that's an issue that's growing, I see, in social media at least.
Yeah. Oh, what's the homeless situation there?
It's really pitiful. Okay, so none of the houses have doors and windows. Okay, and the temperature at daytime, it rises to 105 degrees Fahrenheit with like 90% humidity. So you can imagine the inferno that is. And people are basically sleeping in alleys full of rubble on pieces of wood or old mattresses, wherever they can find a little shade, and without any security at all. I still haven't seen one news story, not even one news story, that all these international agencies that just have billions of dollars, no one's building a refugee camp. Why haven't they built a refugee camp yet?
Yeah.
There's not even talk of doing it. So it really sounds like they have been totally abandoned, because that should have been the first thing that should have been put on planes. You can feed people, okay, and but when you've lost your house and your windows, it's not food you need. Of course, everyone needs food. It's housing you need, and no one's addressed that yet, and I don't see any movement on it. And we talked about this in our last program. Most of these people have contracts to rent, and that contract's still in force. So now they have to pay rent for a destroyed building. legal problems are just huge. 300,000 people lost their homes. 80,000 children have lost their home. So you can imagine the legal disputes are 300,000 legal disputes. The lawyers are probably totally overwhelmed. And it's a terrible situation. Even from a distance, you can feel the hopelessness, even from a distance.
Yeah. She commented again. Iran via Hezbollah has run the country and picked all the government officials. As for aid, I think France is aiding the Maronites from Doha and pro-Iran Qatar are being sent supplies to Hezbollah.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I see in the publicly tweet. So though UNICEF is doing stuff, there are children's organizations that want to create children safe spaces, but basically they're putting a table in a ruined alley with debris all over it and glass all over it, which is certainly not a safe place for children. You have some groups that want to establish Marxist organizations in the city. Their tweet has a big Marxist fist on it, you know. I think I saw one parish in Canada, St. Charbel's, that did a fundraiser over the weekend. They raised, I think, $15,000 in their parish. And I'm sure there's a lot of Christian parishes from Lebanese scattered around the world that are doing similar things. But I haven't seen the bishops of any country get together, the Catholic bishops, and I certainly haven't seen the talking heads say anything about it.
Yeah. I don't know, or I don't. I'm not really sure what. ACT, thanks for stopping by, and please watch the show when you get a chance later on. Let's see.
So if you can, please make a generous donation to the Beirut Humanitarian Fund. We're about halfway towards our first goal, which is $25,000, which will, once we raise that much, then I personally will go to Beirut and assess the situation. And this is an ongoing mission, so this fund is going to remain open until the city is rebuilt and these people get their houses back and their lives back. So we're looking probably for a 2 to 5 year mission. And I will go to Lebanon to found a chapter of our order and a humanitarian organization who will administer the funds there and recruit the Lebanese who really want to help and make a difference as Christians for Christians, and leave it in their care and charge, because I have many things to do. I can't stay in Lebanon for 5 years. So that's our first goal. So I ask you to be generous in donation. I want to thank the 6 individuals who have donated $1,000. 5 donated $1,000. 1 donated 1,000 zlotys. He's from Poland. I'll count that too, because I know the economic opportunities are different in Poland. But make a donation of $1,000 or 1,000 whatever in your own currency. If you know, euros or Australian or Canadian, and think of what it's going to be 5 years without a house, you and your children without schools, and in an environment where in the summertime it gets to 105, and in the wintertime it doesn't get colder than 55. So fortunately they don't have to worry about freezing, but they do get rain, and without windows and doors, you know. The thing about Lebanon is it's not an industrial nation. Okay, it's what I would call a commercial economy. So all those windows and doors have to be imported from Europe, I suppose, or China or India, and that takes time. Okay, then you have to the buildings. It's not just a question of windows. The buildings that lost their windows probably also need to be torn down, because the force of that explosion was so strong it lifted buses up and tossed it. So you can imagine what it did to concrete structures. And from the video footage, you can see there at ordo-militaris.us, the Beirut humanitarian page, is a fly-through by a drone. My impression is that the quality of construction in Beirut is such that many buildings will have to be torn down. They are no longer structurally sound. And if people try to live in them, they'll collapse. And I fear it. I fear it, and I hope it doesn't happen. But I fear that 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, we're going to hear stories coming out of Beirut of buildings that were structurally unsound and were deemed safe, collapsing and killing dozens or hundreds of people. And no one's talking about this, but there needs to be a team of civil engineers that surveys building by building and is very rigorous. And if it's unsafe, it has to be ordered to be torn down and rebuilt. And this is very problematic because the owners of the property, they've lost everything. And
Yeah.
so how can they rebuild? And then the people who live there who had rents, how are they going to ever get their house back again? And you just can't rebuild a city of 300,000 overnight. I don't think anywhere in any city of the world they've ever succeeded adding 300,000 units in 1 year of modern construction. That would require hundreds, thousands of construction companies working simultaneously with almost like a military organized logistics of cement and materials arriving and being shipped and organized and being paid for. And I don't hear anyone talking about that. And that is the only way to rebuild it. Okay. So I fear that Beirut is going to become a wasteland and a ghost town for maybe a decade unless there's some kind of international organization to help. And that's beyond the ability of our order. Okay, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars, and we're talking about big international effort. And unfortunately, in the world, there's really no organization organized to do it. The UN is totally corrupt. The UN just did a trial for a assassination of Hariri, which took place like 15 years ago. They spent $1 billion, they spent $1 billion on this trial, and they convicted one person. $1 billion to try 4 people, 5 people, and they convicted one. So you don't want any money to go through the UN. You know where it's going to end up. It's not going to end up in Lebanon. So US doesn't have interest in helping Lebanon, unfortunately, and neither does France. France is Masonic. They couldn't care less really about Lebanon, unless it's to make it a Masonic society. And there is no strong Catholic or Christian power in that part of the world.
We have a
How's it?
question.
Okay.
CT ask, can the people of Beirut that are unemployed and out of luck right now since the explosion not relocate to nearby cities and towns for the time being?
I cannot give you a definitive answer because my knowledge of the situation in Lebanon is scarce at the best. So maybe our listener there who's lived in Lebanon can answer. But my impression is that there's not sufficient housing in Lebanon. Lebanon already has 1.2 million refugees from Syria. And my contact in Lebanon said that housing is hard to find, and it's all been taken up by the Syrian refugees. So where are 300,000 people going to go?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the 300,000 people that are from Beirut, well, all their livelihood was from that town, their work, their schooling, their homes, their education. It's not like they can move to northern Lebanon or eastern Lebanon. Lebanon, to get you an idea, is Lebanon is as big as the state of Rhode Island and the state of Connecticut, or maybe the state of Massachusetts. It's only 4,000 square miles. It's really not that big. It's not much bigger than Long Island, okay? But in that small area, there are distinctive ethnic groups that have lived in their part of the country for eons. You have the Alawites in the north, okay, the north. Then you have the Maronites in the center, west, okay. You have the Druze in the southeast. You have the Sunni in the southwest, and in the you have the Shia in the east, with some Christians in the north. Every part of the country is different. It's not like you can just get up from you know, you're Armenian and you're from Beirut because the Armenian quarter is destroyed, you just get up and move to another part of the country. There's no Armenians there. Okay. So relocation is going to be difficult, if even possible. And living in a refugee camp is perhaps a temporary solution. It only gets down to 55 normally. So maybe their experts are building tents in the Mideast, so they could build tents that could survive that. But that's not really a desirable long-term solution at all. So where can they go? And then having lost their jobs, their houses, uh, they're going to use up their, if the little savings they have, they're going to use up very quick. I don't know if you know, but if you don't have a house, you could easily burn up $1,000 a week staying in hotels and restaurants. Okay. So these people's savings isn't great. They might have already burned up all their savings. Okay. Because where are they going to eat now? They have to eat at a restaurant or buy bread. You just can't eat bread and sandwiches all the time. And you have little children, you have aged parents, you got medicine, you have medical problems. Where are you going to go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
Okay. Where are you going to bathe? Where are you going to keep your valuables? Your car has been destroyed, so how do you travel to another part of the country? The bus is all destroyed, so how are you going to travel anywhere? So a lot of people are just getting out of the country. There's just no, what can they do there? And once they go, who they come back? And so can they go to another part of the country? I think it's going to be difficult. You know, if we were a wealthy order, if we had $100 million, I would be going there to buy up housing, so and put these refugees in it, okay, and not charge them rent because this is humanitarian need. But
Yeah.
that's something beyond of what we can do. Okay, we don't have those finances, and I don't see anyone talking about housing, and that shows you that they really don't care about the Lebanese. They're not even thinking about that yet. These people that run the UN or Macron, what kind of sensibility they have for this? This is what they should have sent all kinds of temporary housing there immediately.
Yeah.
Because the French government is wealthy. And I know for a fact, because of COVID-19, most of the cruise lines in the Mediterranean are not operating. The French government could hire all those cruise lines, and that's probably at least 100,000 people, bring all those ships to Beirut and put all the victims on the cruise ships at the payment of the French government. At least the people have housing.
Mm-hmm. Housing,
Uh,
food.
no thought at all to do anything about that.
Yeah.
So I don't really think they have the heart. I don't think they have the level of humanity to even care for what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. You get all those ships in, you would have housing, water, food, medical,
Mhm.
and well, CT is Lebanon considered third world?
Okay, so
I
when
don't
I
know.
grew, the answer is CT, that when I grew up and studied at the University of Florida back in the 80s, we used the categories first world, third world. It was a terminology that arose in the Cold War era. It's considered very denigrating to call a country third world today. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, they basically don't use third world. Third world was that's not allied with the East or the West. But in the West, in the United States, third world still has a sense that's not political and that's economic. And I wouldn't say they're third world. You can get nearly everything. You can buy nearly everything you could buy in the West, the era in Lebanon, because they're great merchants, but they don't produce it. So it's kind of like a state in the United States, or part where is a tourist place and doesn't produce anything. You know, kind of like Florida that doesn't produce anything and has lots of housing, and they have to buy and import everything. Okay, and so it's kind of like that. They do produce lots of their own oil and fruits, and they're good at the production of certain things, but they don't have many industries, and the wars have just damaged that. And it's considered a country to have high risk to put factories because of the intense heat in the summertime. It's not so good for industrial manufacturing. I don't know how they generate their power. I guess they have a few power plants. They must burn coal or oil, I would imagine, or maybe natural gas. So I wouldn't say the third world. It's not. I think they probably have a much higher standard of living than Nigeria, for example, much higher. And most of the people speak English or French or Arabic. They have a very Western outlook. Lebanese people are very modern people in the sense of that. Many of them go overseas to get education and come back. So I wouldn't say it's the world, but they don't have huge oil reserves like many countries in the Mideast. They don't have huge minerals reserves. The banks are considered pretty wealthy, but they're tight-fisted kind of banks. The country has lots of debts and doesn't really have good monetary policy that will be able to respond to this. So I don't see economically how they could get themselves out of this problem. I don't see it.
Yeah. Well, that comes with those groups we mentioned in the beginning. UNICEF, Red Cross, they're all pro-abortion folks, and they all want to sterilize you with their so-called vaccines for whatever they want to vaccinate you for. Then you have UN, horrible group, don't trust them. You have the French trying to create it into a mini French republic. Yeah. And what other groups are over there?
There's a lot of NGOs who have never, ever done anything in Lebanon. They've started GoFundMes, and there's some NGOs that have been present a lot in the Mideast, like SOS Orient, and they're there with a few people. It's hard to say how much work they do. A lot of small NGOs are more publicity than work. And their concepts of helping, like there's a fundraiser to help rebuild a restaurant because famous people ate at this restaurant and it needs to be restored. I can't imagine how anyone would raise money for a restaurant where the wealthy eat, when there's 300,000 people living on the streets without anything to eat. Okay. I don't understand it. To me, that seems psychopathic. Excuse me for saying it. Then there's groups that want to empower women that are just rushing there to empower women. The problem is not empowerment of women. The problem is they've become homeless. Okay, their city's been destroyed. There's groups there that want to empower elderly and help children. We're here to help children with safe places and psychological counseling. So they're so whacked out left, some of these organizations, that yeah, they're raising a lot of money, but it will probably go to the salaries of their own or members of their own organization. So a lot of people have already making money off it. And I've seen one that doesn't even seems it was created by someone in Nigeria that's feigning to run a humanitarian relief fund. So they're not run by an actual humanitarian organization. Many of these groups, like there's coders, there's musicians, there's bakers, there's stores running fundraisers, buy our products and we'll donate so much to blah, blah, blah. And so I would say they're opportunists and they're not really addressing the needs. So I'd say, do they have the humanity to see what the problem is? Yeah. So our organization's founded in 2016. We already raised $5,500 for the Syrian refugees in the town of El-Ka, Lebanon, in 2017. And the pastor there, you couldn't call up the Melkite pastor there in El-Ka and ask him. We sent him $500 by bank wire for the Syrian refugees. And we've helped the refugees in Mosul. I sent the Catholic Archbishop there $500 in 2016, I think it was. This is February 2017. And we've helped a Christian school in southern India. So it's not our primary goal, humanitarian work, but we do it because we are an organization with a heart. So this is not opportunist for us. We've long had intention of starting a humanitarian work in Lebanon. So it's the need that has arisen. And I want to thank everyone who's already given to the Beirut Humanitarian Fund. This is the largest humanitarian fund we've ever started so far. So 12,700, I think we're at 12,750 or so. And So I want to thank everyone. It's really extraordinary what they've done, and everyone's opened the house. And a lot of people have donated who are not members of our order and just know of us in the last 4 years. So it's not every one of our followers. I think the total number of donors is not even at 100. Okay. So we have more than 20,000 followers in social media. So there's a lot of you out there who could give and have not, and I implore you. And I understand now with this COVID craziness that has destroyed the economy everywhere, that most of you can't. Some of you listening may not even be able to pay your own bills or your own rent and get food for your own families. Do not give to this fund, okay? Charity begins at home. Your duty to take care of your own family. I'm talking about the people who have not been affected or who are well off enough that they made money on the market, went it down, now it's back up, so they've made 30, 40%. So count your blessings from God and think of the truly needy. We Christians have to open our hearts for the people of Lebanon because they're Christian. They're part of Christendom. And for the people of Beirut, because this tragedy, just as I've said, where are they going to find help? And everyone rushing to help him is really their enemy and has malign designs on them. I've seen 3 fundraisers on social media so far that want you to give them money so they can promote gay rights in Beirut. Well, the problem is not gay rights. The problem is the city was destroyed. Okay. Can you snap out of your ideology for a second to see human suffering? And most of these groups cannot, sadly. So where are these people going to get help unless Christians step forward to help them? Okay. And not everyone in the city is Christian. Okay. But that doesn't mean that we don't help the ones that are. Okay. And not all the Christians in the city are Catholic, although majority in Lebanon, something like I think 70 or 80% of the Christians are Catholics because most of them are Maronites. Okay. But there's also Armenians and Syriac Orthodox and Assyrian Orthodox.
Yeah.
And Greek Orthodox.
Sad to say, we're about the only Catholic person on YouTube and Mixcloud and BitChute talking about this. And there's those with reaches that can reach 1 million people a day. Excuse me, I got a cough a bit. Taylor Marshall. Mike Church.
Taylor Marshall. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Ann Barnhart.
Mm-hmm.
Steve Skojek.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Matt.
Oh, yeah.
Fatima Center.
Yo.
Who are the other big Catholic talkers out there? Okay. Yeah. The Gordon brothers. Who else are the big ones who really have a big social media following?
Church Militant.
Mike Voris. I challenge all of them to put aside all your differences and do a fundraiser for the Catholics and Christians in Beirut. You don't have to do it through us. You don't have to have anything to do with us, okay? But open your hearts to the Christians of Lebanon and put aside your own interests for a moment, just a moment, and do a fundraiser for them, okay? Because all those organizations you just mentioned could probably raise each $100,000. Some of them could raise millions. And you can't think of it, well, if we raise money for the people in Lebanon, I'm not going to be able to build I'm not going to, don't think of it that way. Think of the honor and glory of Jesus Christ and your duty to help the poor person on the road who's been beaten up by thieves. And don't be like the priest and the Levite who turned their head the other way and said, above my pay grade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We challenge you, Taylor Marshall, Michael Voris, Michael Matt, Fatima Center, Timothy Gordon, Dave Gordon, all of you talking heads out there on YouTube.
Mike Church, Restoring Faith Media, groups that have a lot bigger reach than we do. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know you're not humanitarian organizations, but the duty of charity to the needy applies to everyone. It's not just humanitarian organizations.
Mhm.
Christ didn't say that feed the poor if you're a humanitarian organization. He says to all Christians, feed the poor, clothe the naked, and give housing to the homeless. So this is a duty of all Christians, and we do this for the love of Christ, and we should treat them as Jesus Christ ourselves, who's lost his house and needs housing. And we won't even talk about the people who have medical needs now. The hospital's been destroyed. Many people are not getting the needed medical care. There was a pathetic story about a poor girl who has cancer in the city and now can't get her care.
Yeah. Um, what would it take for the order to provide some sort of housing?
I think unless a billionaire knocks on our door, it's not something we can do because housing there is not inexpensive. I'd say housing there is, for you. I've seen four bedroom apartment condo go for 230,000 dollars or euro. So that's 60,000-70,000 a person. That's pretty almost much what it could be in certain parts of the United States, depending on the quality of housing. So that way of solving the housing is not so easy, even if that housing could be found. And if you find people housing like that, let's assume you had a wealthy benefactor and he could house everyone. Where is they going to get their work? How are they going to feed themselves?
Yeah.
The businesses have also been destroyed. The whole social fabric's been destroyed. And it's not an easy thing to create once it's destroyed. It's easy to destroy. It can be destroyed in a minute, as we've seen. Rebuilding it can take a long time. Although the Lebanese are pretty brilliant, and when it comes to commerce and things like that. But it really needs like a Leviathan effort. As I said, it would need like almost a military kind of organization to rebuild the city. And I don't see that. I don't see a will for that. And I don't expect to see a will for that among Masonic nations or Islamic nations or Marxist nations.
Mm-hmm.
A nation that was truly Christian and strong could do it. And the only two nations like that, Poland and Hungary, don't really have much interest in the Mideast. Hungary doesn't even have a coastline. And Poland has a small navy, but nothing much. And so it's really the negligence of us Christians in the West, who for more than a century have not organized Christian parties and established Christian governments in the West, that leaves the Lebanese now in a situation where they're going to help. So there's small NGOs like ourselves. We can do what we can, and we pledge to do all we can. Okay, but we have no, our order's source of income is only about 10,000 a year. We don't sell much. We don't have much of an income. We've raised more money for the Beirut victims in this relief fund than we have an income this year. Does that affect us? Does we care about that? No, we don't care. We don't normally even post an income every year. We take a loss because the purpose of organization is to help people, not to make a profit. But there's a lot of organizations that could help. There are a lot of Christian business owners listening to this program or who could listen to this program. And every year they make their donation. They donate to UNICEF or Four Leaf Club or any kind of Red Cross or any kind of these liberal organizations. Why don't you donate it to a Christian NGO that's going to help these people? Okay, can't go there yourself. And a lot more could be done. And so we not only have to think personally what I can do to help the Beirut Fund by making a donation to myself. You need to talk to your employer if you have one, if you have work, or your colleagues in the business where you retired from, and say, why don't this year our corporation do a fundraiser, and why don't we dedicate all our charitable giving this year to the people of Beirut, and choose the way you want to give the money. But I would humbly suggest you consider the Beirut Humanitarian Relief Fund, and that start mobilizing that, because we Christians can give the real solution to the problem, because our religion, our faith gives us our heart for real suffering if we're doing it for that motive, even though many
Hold on, folks. He's fixing his audio. Uh, maybe? Yeah.
Now?
There you go.
You hear me now? Okay. Sorry, foolish me. I should never touch my USB port during a program. Okay. So I think we can do it better, Christians. I think we can if we're doing it motivated by our faith, and I think we need to do it. And I think there is a great need for them to get this kind of help. But it takes organization. You can help more than just giving money. You can help ask your friends to give a donation, okay, and take a collection up your neighborhood. Convince your boss. Convince the pastor of your parish to take up a collection, okay? But don't give it to Catholic Charities in your country, because they're going to skim off 40%, and the bishop's going to skim off some, and it's not going to get there. The money has to be given directly to an NGO that's working on the ground there, or will be working on the ground there. Otherwise, just it has to be a group that's not going to pay salaries to people that just suck up the money rather than going to help her. And so there are ways you can help and become an apostle, become a crusader for the Christians of Beirut, the Christians of Lebanon. Because, if every part of the mystical body of Christ immediately ran to help the other, the church would be much stronger. The faith of all of us would be much stronger, and the church would be able to resist her enemies all the more. It's our lack of charity for one another that makes us subject to the attacks of the enemies of Christ. And the Muslims see that clearly, and that's why they're all rushing to send money there, because they want to turn Beirut into an Islamic city. They want the Armenians or the Christians to come back. And they want to shift the power balance in Lebanon. They've been working on this now for 50 years to be completely an Islamic state and oppose Sharia law on everyone, because they don't want those Maronites and Christians to live there. That's a goad in their, Islamic domination of the world. The fact that those Christians have resisted for 1,300 years the Islamic domination. And don't you think for a moment that's not their motivation, because they're devout Muslims and that's what their religion teaches them. So there's a lot of money being given for evil motives. Where's the money being given for good and holy motives? That's my question. And that's what we hear from the Beirut Humanitarian Fund.
We have a good comment, good question from Ian Ball. He's like, make something easy to print out one page to post at church.
Okay, that we could do.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be easy. That could be done. And
we could do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll work on that. Good suggestion. Can you hear me?
Hello. You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're hearing me through my tablet. Now do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is an example, everyone, that we do not waste your money. on computers. We're a very low budget organization. The tablet I'm using cost 220 and it was bought 5 years ago. And it's breaking down because we don't spend money on these things. We spend money on helping person. And so, I'm trying to run this thing out for as long as it does because I believe in frugality.
Mhm.
So the monies to the people ask, what are we going to do with the monies? Beirut Humanitarian Relief Fund. They're going to go to Catholic NGOs in the city. And if there are none that we can trust what they're doing with, we're going to found an NGO in Lebanon that will administer the funds so that we know exactly what's going on. And one thing I see right off the bat is a need for security, because if there's going to have to be refugee camps for the winter. You can't house 300,000 people in available apartments. I don't believe that's the case. At least probably 50, 70,000 are going to have to be in a refugee camp. And who's going to give them security? Because you may not know this, but during the Syrian civil war, when millions of refugees fled Syria and ended up in UN administered refugee camps, the Christians were persecuted by the Muslims. They were raped, they were murdered, they were strangled, they were robbed. And the UN security forces didn't do anything about it. So I see a need for security for the Christians. And that's one thing we work on. I think our order founding a security company in Lebanon would want to give jobs to the needy, those who've lost their work and need a career and need a stable employment, and then use that manpower to help in humanitarian efforts, whether security or just help rebuilding or cleaning up in any way that can be done, while on the side running a bit security business to provide for those needs, the financial need for that, in addition to keep the humanitarian relief fund going and publicize it and have Lebanese people speak on behalf of the needs like we're doing now, so that we create a social media channel to get information out about what's going on and how people can help, and not just, there for the moment before the cameras. And I think that's our general plan. And our corporation has enough to found an NGO in Lebanon, and it will take some help. So if you're a Lebanese and you have friends in the city or Christians and they'd like to help, then tell them to start following us on social media, so that when I do go, God willing, to Beirut, we can start right fresh, with some good, really zealous helpers and get things done quickly without wasting much time and with much money. And but we can't get there until we finish fundraising. So we need to raise another 13,000, 12,500. And that depends on those listening to the show, whether you're listening live or you will be listening in the next few days. And I want to thank everyone who's been giving. Many whom have been giving $100. A Catholic priest gave $100. A few lay people have given $200 or $300. And the ladies, I think, are leading the men, but I want to thank the Air Force pilot, donated $1,000, and the businessmen. And if you're well off, if you have investments, if you have made a lot of money on Bitcoin or in the stock market, or you're a lawyer and you have a good pension, you have a good amount of money saved away, consider more than $1,000. Consider a $10,000 donation or higher. And if you're very wealthy, consider a greater donation, because you have a home and you're not going to suffer for the rest of your life. These people have lost everything and they don't have a rest of their life. They've lost everything. They may still have their life, but they haven't died. Many of them are scarred. They've lost their businesses, they've lost their city. And in a country where there's really no hope to find help, and everyone who's rushing there has some evil intention. So I think we're an organization that can really help Christians as Christians in the way they truly need it. But our hands are tied. You can make our hands operative if you donate to the fund. Otherwise, what can we do? I'm afraid I don't have a penny to my name. I don't speak Arabic or French. So when I'm there, I'm going to have to find some trustworthy people to be my translators. And I do know a member of the clergy there. And I do have some contacts in the church for that purpose. But we're going above and beyond what we need to do. We're not Lebanese. And so I think from that point of view, we can approach the thing from an independent point of view, a professional point of view. But you need to go above and beyond too, I think. Our Lord says that give what you have and all will be washed clean for you. Okay. People don't realize that even if they confess their sins and are sorry for their sins, there's still punishment you have to pay in this world or in the world to come. And we Catholics call that purgatory, and we call temporal punishments in this world. And by giving to charity, you can wash that away. And so the widow gave her 2 mites, and that was more than everyone else, and because she had nothing else to give. And rarely do you see a wealthy person give all their wealth, but some of them can certainly give a lot more than they do. So if you happen to be wealthy, you can do a lot of good. And if you want to do a matching donation, if you want to say, I'll donate 50,000 if you raise another 50,000 in the next month, or that will be a challenge to us, and I'll publish it, and we're willing to accept those kind of pledges. And that encourages other people to give, because they say, well, my donation is going to get doubled now or tripled. And so anyway, we can virtuously raise the funds, and I encourage you to do that. So if you just inherited, or you just got a big stock profit, or if in the shutdown you happen to be in an economy that made money, not that everyone did, most people didn't make any money. And if you just have a person here, just a big-hearted person, you realize you were born to make a difference in this world by your charity, and you're able to do that, then do that. And I know people who have never married and have never had children, and in the side of the world they're really not considered anything. They've given $1,000. So there are people who are very generous out there, and I encourage everyone to be generous. And AJ and I don't get a salary for this, because as I say, that's not the purpose of our organization. Our purpose is helping others, not making a living off the suffering of others.
And I want to thank Ian Hall for that suggestion. We'll work on it. And thank you for following us on Facebook and YouTube. And may God bless you as well. Any other comments, please chime in on the chat box. There's still 3 of you watching.
Okay, so to make a donation, you go to ordo-militaris.us. Okay, when you come to ordo-militaris.us, you'll see right at the top of the page the words "Make a donation to the Beirut Humanitarian Relief Fund," and that will take you to the page where you can make a donation, and you can make a donation using a Visa or MasterCard or Diners Club card, a debit or credit card. You can use a PayPal debit card. You can use Google Pay, Apple Pay, Microsoft Pay. If you're in Europe, you could use the Sofort system and make a bank wire, or if you're in the Netherlands, you could do the Ideal system. With Google Pay, if you have a Bitcoin wallet, you could donate with Bitcoin, and or cash. You can buy Google Pay credits in most stores around the world, and in cash, and then donate that. So there's you can donate in 30 different currencies. Right? From the ruble to the pound sterling to the Australian to the peso, shekels. You can donate in anything, and all the donations accepted through the Stripe payment system. So Stripe charges us about 2%, 2 to 3%. Okay, so that's a very small amount considering. And we will transfer the funds to Beirut by a bank wire, so we won't pay that kind of a thing. That's how you can make your donation. I ask you, please be generous and think about it. Usually those who think about it longer can be more generous. And think about what charities you have given to, and are they really helping right now? Do people really need that right now? Or maybe you've been helping certain organizations for years that aren't really high-level urgent charities. This is a high-level urgent need now for these Christians. And maybe you're donating to groups that don't help Christians or go to things like political, okay? And think now of donating for the love of Christ to Christians. You'll have much more merit in heaven. And that's our duty as Christians. Our duty as Christians is certainly not to help secular or Masonic organizations.
Mhm. And just looking at how much a Bitcoin is, that is just truly amazing. Point 0.86 of a Bitcoin is $10,000. One full Bitcoin is $11,000.
Yeah, so if back in the old days you bought a Bitcoin for $100 and you count yourself lucky and fortunate, realize that's the province of God, maybe donate a Bitcoin for the Christians of Lebanon and sanctify your profit that way.
Mm-hmm. Just amazed at what the value is of a Bitcoin.
Yeah, it fluctuates. Tomorrow, though, it could go down to 5,000.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin fluctuates all over the place.
So if you're a Bitcoin, what are they called? Miners? What?
Investors, I think. Yeah, some people mine them, but those are the ones looking for the new prime numbers. Or if you're in the stock market, or you just happen to have a pension, or you're a businessman, and you have the cash on hand, thinking of making a charitable donation that is truly honorable. Because when you help the Christian you don't know who's far away, you get a lot more merit than helping some cause in your city, for which you'll be praised in the newspapers and get some kind of social benefit from, fame or things like that. As like the Lord said, what you give in secret, God the Father will reward you.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding those who give in public, our Lord didn't say there was any reward.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, there's like 4 of you still in the chat here, but you know, you can speak up, hop into the chat. Okay, 3 of you. Just come on in, say your piece. I remember going camping one time when it was super humid here. It was unbearable. So I can't imagine that high of a heat and that high of a humidity in a tent. Unless they're those special tents that have ACs on it. How we saw this morning and searching them. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. Mhm. Yeah, it's not the best because I'm hearing you through my computer and talking to you through my mic. I think I'm talking through my, I might be talking through you. I don't know where I'm talking through. I might be talking through, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not, my headphones aren't working. They're disconnected. I thought they're working. So, yeah. So I have it set up so that if you make a donation, I can tell you right away and we put it on we're not a fancy group like LifeSite Knows. As soon as you make a donation, their ticker goes right away. I have to get an email, then I have to go on the site and change the number where, we don't waste your money and things like that. So, because that would cost thousands of dollars of coding. And we're not experts in marketing. Okay, we're experts in charity. That's what our work is about. And so we're an apostolate in the true sense of the word. A lot of talking heads out there say they're running an apostolate, but they're really raising money to build their new mansion. literally. And they call that an apostolate. But that's not an apostolate. They're running a business. Okay. And we do this as an apostolate to help others. So I encourage you to donate, and I think we merit your consideration from that point of view.
Yeah.
And I want to thank everyone who follows us on social media, but only about, not even a 1% of those who follow us on social media actually participate in the Order in Health. So now I want to talk to all of you who follow us on social media and have listened this far. Become active. Don't be a couch potato social media. If you just participate in social media and it doesn't change your life, you're worse than a potato, you're dead. React, become something different, something better. And I think by joining our order, helping in our order's humanitarian missions, you can do that.
Yeah. Any questions on Twitter?
No, I'm not getting any questions on Twitter. So if you want to call it AJ, we'll end the live program and leave it at that for those who watch it later tonight and tomorrow.
I want to thank you all who have joined us and joined us in the chat. And you asked great questions, gave great suggestions and great information about Lebanon. And thank you. And how can you get if we do the poster thing, how can we get it to them?
We can post it on the page at Order Militaris Radio TV for this program. We can produce it in a Microsoft Word format, and then you can download it and print it out.
Okay.
I'll try to have it up there within the hour.
All right. Tomorrow's program is to Saint Stephen of Hungary for his feast day. So it'll be our regular pre-recorded show. And then back to normal pre-recorded programming. And please share, like this live stream video. And when it gets up, when YouTube says it's all ready, please share it and around so everyone can see it, hear about what we're doing with Beirut and how to help and who they are and what they need. And also the link for the Beirut Humanitarian Relief Funds is in the chat a few times. It will also be in the description, in the comment section. So there will be plenty of ways to find it. Please use the link. And okay, making sure we didn't have nothing on Twitter. And that is it. This is Order Militaris Radio TV signing off. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.